with the former IBF and WBC welterweight champ Shawn Porter. What's up with you, champ?
Doing great, man. Finally getting a chance to get online with you.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to get this cracking because you out here in Las Vegas, so I felt it was only
Yeah,
right we connect.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny because I stated myself, but at the same time wanting to be more of a contributor to the community. I think it's things like this that have to happen. So
Right.
once I found out that you had reached out to me, I said, yeah, let's set that up and get it done,
Okay. Much love, man.
and not just one time. I'll be
Right.
back.
Exactly.
Basically.
You already know. All right. So, I seen you gotta tell us about the new addition to your family.
Yeah. Adonai is 2 months now. He's almost closer to 3 months. He's about 2.5 months now. Had Adonai like just before we like started to really peak in camp. So it was like perfect timing because I was able to go to the hospital with my wife. We had him in a little bit more than 24 hours. They sent us home. Everything was great. He's healthy and beautiful and loud and crying all the time because he always hungry. But it's all good, man, and it's a blessing. I got two boys, man. I couldn't ask for anything else.
Right. Yeah, I
Right.
feel you.
Yeah, I
I
feel you.
actually
All
got
right.
a 1 year old myself. So, I'm
Beautiful.
not too far from
Congratulations.
you. And I got two older
Yeah.
kids too. So it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, ain't it?
Yeah. My oldest niece is 18. She'll be 19 next year, and it's funny because my brother, just being 2 years older than me, he started when he was young, and my parents started when they were young. So I just, in my mind, that's what I thought. I would start young, and I would now at this point have some teenagers, but it didn't happen now for me. Happen that way for me. God had other plans for me, and my wife and I, we just been plugging away at this family thing, man, just trying to make it work.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
dope,
that's
man.
dope,
All
man.
right.
All
So,
right.
it's a lot of things I want to touch on with you. You've had an amazing career. It's not over. You still got some years in you. And so I want to take it back a little bit to the beginning and we're going to progress through. I'm not going to take too much of your time. But so who was the first boxer to inspire you to want to become a boxer? Like, how did that start with you?
Well, I guess we could say it was my dad because my dad was a boxer. But
Okay.
I think this story is becoming a little bit more and more known. But my dad was a boxer and a trainer in his early 20s when myself and my brothers, we were young. I was 4 years old when my dad first took me to the boxing gym. And my dad is just, he's never changed. One thing about my dad is hard work. That's what he preaches to me and has always preached to me. My mom would drop us off at the boxing gym, and my dad would put us in the mirror doing our basics and fundamentals of boxing. I mean, I was 4 years old in the gym with other, teenagers, other early 20-year-old guys that were wanting to be professional. I had no clue what I was doing. I just was doing what I was told. And the funny thing about it is, he said, "Well, when did you first want to become a professional boxer?" Well, I started when I was 4 years old, but the actual thoughts of, okay, I'm gonna turn pro didn't happen until I was about 18 years old. I didn't really, being a professional boxer wasn't really my goal. A lot like it is and was a lot of amateur fighters that I came up with, and a lot of amateurs now. My thing was, because I started when I was four, that just was what we did. Training was what we did. And then my dad knew that once we turned 8, we could start fighting. My dad never came to me and said, "Hey, you want to get a boxing license and start boxing?" Like, it just was what we did. And so even when as a teenager, it was what I did. I was good, and I love to win. I'm a big competitor. So I think that's really what kept me going in the sport. But my real interest and desire for the sport didn't really even begin until I was a late teen, and going into my 20s, turning pro. It was like no turning back. Like, here we are, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a funny story, man. My story isn't really like a lot of other guys. I remember being at amateur tournaments, world tournaments, with guys who are like, I can't wait to turn pro, and I just would look at them like, okay, good, yeah, good luck. Like I don't, that really wasn't in my forefront of my mind until I was almost late teens or almost 20.
Okay, yeah. And it seems like training doesn't, maybe it's not as big as a obstacle for you. It seems like some boxers, they're like, ah, man, I got to go into training camp. But it just seems like it's like you're accustomed to it. Like,
Crazy, man. It really is crazy. I do a lot of interviews, and I'm always talking about my dad. I think people probably feel that I have a biased opinion of my dad, and I really don't. I probably would be the first one to tell you like, yeah, he did see that, but
yeah,
it's not like that with us. And my dad has just done so much for me and taught me so much. One thing that I preach to a lot of people now. I mean, we were having a couples dinner just the other night, and I was preaching to them the same things that have been taught to me. I told them, I said, your mind controls everything. Your mind is going to determine whether or not you come home to your wife and want to hang out with her or be on your phone. Your mind controls whether or not you're going to come home to your wife and be strong enough to tell her something that went on at work or something that went on while you were driving or something that happened, and open up and be honest about something, or if you're just gonna shut down and hold it all inside until it goes away. Your mind controls everything. That's something that I learned from boxing. And I'm basically giving these people a boxing lesson in my backyard, So
yeah,
that's something that my dad gave to me. My dad just preached it to me at a young age that your mind controls everything. And so now when it's time to fight, now when I'm not getting the paycheck that I expected to get or I wanted to get, or I'm not fighting the guy that I thought I was supposed to fight, all that kind of stuff, my mind just kind of massages everything and makes it the way it's got to be. I go into training camp and it's no thing. You know what I mean? I go weighing in. It's no thing. The fight going up against probably one of the hardest fighters and toughest fighters in the world, Errol Spence Jr., was no thing. I told everybody when we first he got in the ring after I beat Danny Garcia and said, hey, I want to fight you. I looked at Jim Gray during the interview. I said, do I look worried? I wasn't worried because I knew my mind was going to get me where I needed to be. And that's what always happens for me.
yeah. That's a beautiful approach to take. And it goes back. I seen an interview, and you were talking about. They asked you about Keith Porter and Pacquiao. So no, yeah, Keith Thurman, and Pacquiao, and you were saying that you were talking about Pacquiao in this part, and you were saying, well, sometimes people, maybe their perception is that he's still at that top speed and that top power, so they kind of trick their mind into thinking that, and that's some of that's what you was just talking about right there.
I really do. I think that with that, I basically called that fight the way I knew it was going to happen, and it really did play out the way I expected. There were really only two surprises for me in that fight between Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao. The first surprise was that Manny Pacquiao took his foot off of the gas pedal, and I personally believe that he, in a lot of ways, allowed Keith Thurman to survive. And the reason why I say he allowed him to survive is because when he took his foot off of the gas pedal, he gave Keith some room to work. And once Keith got some room to work, he gained confidence. Manny Pacquiao, early in that fight, like I knew he took every bit of confidence that Keith Thurman had out. And instead of taking him out, he pulled back, and he allowed Keith to come back mentally and get back into the fight. And then on the other side of that, I did not expect that from Keith. I knew that Keith was going to lose early rounds, and I thought that the fight would go like that. Keith stayed strong. He stayed mentally tough, and he said, hey, I'm undefeated. I'm not going to win this fight, but I'm going to try to get this guy and show everybody out there that I am Keith one-time Thurman. So those were really the only two surprises. But outside of that, the fight went the way that I thought it would go, because I had seen Keith. I had known Keith for so long, and knowing that Keith had been out of the ring, I'm basically beating the drum with the same stick. But I knew that mentally Keith was not where he was in 2016 when he fought me, 2017 when he fought Danny Garcia, injury after injury, training camp after training camp with no work, real work in the ring. I knew that mentally he wasn't going to be where he needed to be, and that's basically how Manny was able to really upset the young lion, as everybody put it, because Manny still is a lot. He still has a lot in the gas tank, and he can wear you down mentally as well as physically.
Right. Yeah. In boxing, it seems like it's very important to remain active. Those layoffs can have a big impact on you. It's like basketball. When you get injured, it takes you a couple games to come back. You're just not going to come back that first game and put up 30.
I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. When I played football all my life, and when I graduated high school, I stopped playing football. My guys would invite me to come play flag football. Yeah. And after one game, I'm sore. I can hardly walk. I'm like, man, what's going on? It's your body is not in that rhythm. You lose a lot of it. I'm in the backyard just yesterday, and while my son's playing around, I'm like, you know what? Let me throw this ball up in the air and catch it like I used to catch some punts. So I'm throwing it up like I used to catch some punts. And then I caught it one time and tell myself to take off, do a little juke and go to the right. I go to the right. I'm like, oh. I'm like, I'm in the backyard like I'm a 50-year-old or something. When you're not moving the way your body knows you to move, you lose some of it. And it does. That ring rust, for a lot of guys, it catches up to you.
Yeah, and I could see you're staying active, staying on top of your game, so that's definitely good. Because a lot of fighters, due to the COVID, not everybody's getting their matches.
Yeah.
And like we just talked about Thurman, like, man, he's been out the ring for a while again.
Yeah, And on top of that, you got COVID. So when you're a fighter that's taking some time, you wanna get away from the ring and all that kind of stuff, and I'll come back when I'm ready. And then when you get your mind prepared to start coming back, and then something like this happens, it just really takes you all the way back down that road that you were just fighting to get off of, So really, man, my heart goes out to every young fighter. I remember when I was just turned pro, when I was 10-0, I still could not. Boxing was not supporting me when I was 10-0. When I was 15-0, boxing, I was just getting to the point where I could afford to have my own apartment and keep my gas on full and things like that in my car. Boxing does not really, you're not able to support yourself until you're upwards to that 15 and 20 and you're really making some real money. So my heart goes out to all those guys that are like less than 10-0. You basically got to fight 10 times in 1 year to support yourself. Then this COVID happens. My heart goes out to those guys that don't have a trainer like my dad, who is a football field and a half away from me and is willing to build a gym in his backyard. I know Keith Thurman's got a gym. The Charlo brothers, they got a gym. Errol Spence Jr.'s got a gym. Danny Garcia, the big names, those guys got a gyms. So we're in for a treat in the coming months of having these big fights. But at the same time, a lot of these lower level fighters, they don't have the same access. So it's going to be interesting seeing the way boxing really does come back, because outside of the big names, these guys are going to struggle to be prepared for fights. And so I'm hoping that the best happens for all those guys out there. I know Top Rank, they came back in a big way on ESPN, and they were going like this. And then the fights kind of started to it was a little bit of a roller coaster ride, So PBC and Fox and Showtime, they're back now. So I think boxing is about to really start to pump out some good fights.
Right. And it seems like boxing is positioned to be one of the sports that can be successful during COVID, because you don't have all the players like football and so reliant on the actual ticket sales. You guys can still do pay-per-view or whatever. And
Well, even aside from that, though, real quick, those other NBA, NFL, the faculty, I mean, there's so many guys on the sidelines, there's so many doctors, there's so many trainers that you got to worry about. A lot of hands touching one football, you know what I mean? So those guys, I think they struggle to figure out how to come back and when to come back. I'm so glad that football is back, but particularly for boxing, especially with this being my sport, I want these guys to understand that now's the time for you to become relevant in America, because right now, and it's been for a long time, boxing is the fourth or fifth sport in America. You know, you got NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, MLS even, you know. So I think right now is the time for boxing to really make some noise. These guys got to understand that.
I agree with you. All right, let's go to the business, because you were talking about how it takes a while for a boxer to be able to support themselves through boxing. And we've heard through the years how all these boxers, they get bad deals, or they don't make the money that they're supposed to make from their promoters or whatever. So, like, say if I was a boxer and I'm like 9-0, what do you think my purse would look like about at 9-0? I know it depends. It depends.
Yeah, it really all does. It does depend on the fighter and the promoter and what kind of deals you sign and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I would think maybe on the top side, if you are 9-0, let's say 9-0, used to be you were fighting on ESPN. Now you could be fighting on Fox, right, possibly fighting on Showtime. If you're fighting on Showtime, you might be making 15, 20. ESPN, you might be making more like 8 to 10. Same thing with Fox. If you are 9-0, you're probably making somewhere around 8 to 10, and also depends on who you're getting in the ring with, and what you're lining yourself up with. Those guys that are like, we see Teofimo Lopez, right, is I believe Teofimo was about 13-0, and he's about to fight Lomachenko for a world championship title. Right. 13-0. When I was 13-0, nobody was even coming to me saying maybe you could fight for a world championship title. So at that point, I think with 13-0, I might have been fighting for 15 to 20, and Lopez is about to fight for $1 million. So it all depends on what you're doing at that point in time and who you're in the ring with, and the promoter as well.
Okay, let's talk about that fight too, because I seen on a couple interviews you talked about that fight, and in the interview that I'm talking about, you talked about Lopez, you talked about Garcia, Shakur, and Ryan Garcia. And so you said in that interview, you said that you thought Teofimo was probably the one that was most likely to give Lomachenko problems and probably has the best chance to beat him. But I want you to kind of expand on that explanation. Like, what do you see in Teofimo that you don't see in Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, or the others just yet?
I think that Teofimo has the mindset of a champion already. I think that he's been decisive in his mind for a long time, what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. I think his dad right behind him, backing him up, moving to the same music. I think that they have a recipe to become champions immediately. If we're talking about Ryan Garcia, you play around a little bit too much with this social media. You're a little bit too, your nickname's The Flash, but does that flash really work against somebody like Lomachenko? I don't think that flash is even close to enough against Lomachenko. So let's X out Ryan Garcia. You're too flashy. Sorry, but the flash can only get you so far.
So wait. Let's stay on Garcia for a second. Okay. So when you say flash, do you mean like over the course of a fight, he's just not strong enough on defense or on offense? Or let's break that down a little.
I agree 100%. I think he's flashy. He's quick. He's fast. He's very intuitive in the ring. He has great reflexes in the ring. But at the same time, we've never seen him in the ring with somebody who can take that speed, block it, and keep coming and deliver some hard punches. That's my big thing. Just to go back to Lopez and Lomachenko for a second. Lopez, you're young compared to Lomachenko, who in his 30s now is a grown man. That's grown man strength. Some guys get grown man strength at a younger age. I was blessed with grown man strength at a young age. Not everybody is blessed with that. Ryan Garcia does not have grown man strength by any means. So it's going to be speed. But once somebody gets past that speed, what else do you have? You know, once you get past the speed, you have the Ryan Garcia who is very intellectual in the ring and can make the right moves, take you left and go back right when you're expecting him to stay left. You know, he can make those real subtle professional moves, but at the same time, I think he's all speed, and I think that he's going to get to a level where speed is just not enough.
Okay, so what about Devin Haney? Why do you,
So Devin's thing is his team. Devin's thing is his preparation. I think that Devin has not prepared himself to become a world champion. I think Devin has prepared himself to be undefeated. He's prepared himself to be the quote unquote next Mayweather. He's prepared himself to be action packed, but he has not prepared himself to be a world champion. And I think any world champion knows what I'm talking about right now. Your training camp, yeah, there's some bumping, some bruises, and it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride through a training camp, but everything is tight. Everybody knows what they're doing day by day. You got your whole schedule and regiment planned out from beginning to end. I know that Teofimo and his dad and his team, I know that right now they have that. I know that right now, Devin Haney, that's a big part to the game as far as being a champion. And right now, he does not have that solidified enough for me. I don't think that he has prepared himself to become a world champion at this point in his career. He's prepared himself to be undefeated. He's prepared himself to basically beat anybody at that lower level. But there's some other things that's got to be added when you go all the way up. Different game plans, different strategies, different ways to punch. You know, if you're punching with the same speed, the same tempo, those guys like Lomachenko, those guys like Danny Garcia, Errol Spence Garcia, Keith Thurman, Shawn Porter, especially Manny Pacquiao, Leo Santa Cruz, those guys can pick up that rhythm and that tempo. They can see it before it comes. They know exactly what's coming, and they'll keep you off balance, and you won't be able to connect the way you did when you were undefeated on your way up. So I think that there's some things blocking him from becoming a world champion. It's just the preparation for me at this point.
Okay, so it's kind of like the Patriots. The Patriots, it's like whoever's on their team, they good. But then you got the Dallas Cowboys that got all the talent, but they don't fulfill their potential. And you're saying that it's possibility that Devin Haney's like that until they tighten up the training camp and everything.
Exactly. There's a lot of guys out there that have a lot of potential, but there aren't a lot of trainers that know how to help that fighter reach that potential. There are a lot of fighters who aren't willing to do what it takes to reach that potential. And, you know, it really is to become a world champion and stay consistent at being a world champion. There's a lot that goes into it. Some things are some things you just don't even know it until it happens, you know. And I think that let's go back to Lomachenko for a second. Everybody talks about him having one loss and he took that loss at 3-0. He was in a 12-round fight, third fight. He's done everything that you could do as an amateur. And so he thought that he was ready for that world championship level, but he found himself in a position where he didn't know how to pace himself. He didn't know how to handle a fighter who was pushing him and a fighter that was grabbing him and tying him up and clinching him and then pushing him and punching him and all these professional tactics. A lot of guys think that is easy until they get in the ring. Sometimes you got to get in the ring and go through it. Once you go through it, you can make adjustments. And when you come back, you're great and you never look back. And that's something that Lomachenko has done. He took a world championship fight, third fight, wasn't ready for it, found out in the moment, and then he's never looked back ever since.
Right. Okay. So now let's talk about Shakur Stevenson.
I think Shakur he's second to Lopez, but I think he could be a world champion very quickly as well. I think that Shakur Stevens has all of the attributes to become a world champion. I know that he has the team to become a world champion. I think when I've looked at Lopez and when I've looked at Stevens, I think that there's just something that I see in Lopez that makes me feel it really is. It's hard. I think right now, even it's like pick 'em. which one do you think is going to be a champion first? And I just feel that it's going to be Lopez. I think that even if Lopez loses to Lomachenko, he'll still find his way into another title fight and be able to pull it off. I know that they're gonna position Stevens in the right fights, and when it's time for him to take off, I have no doubt he's going to take off and become a champion. But it's just, if you ask me to pick one, I pick Lopez. There's just something about Lopez that makes me feel like he's going to be the one, or he is the one, opposed to Stevens.
And is it possible that he might have faced? Is it safe to say that he's faced the stiffer competition so far? It seems like
Lopez.
Lopez. Lopez.
Yeah, I think that he's faced a stiffer competition so far. Both guys, they're a lot alike. I think they both are very flashy. They get in the ring and they enjoy what they're doing. Both of those guys are very intuitive and instinctive in the ring. Both guys are very smart in the ring. I think if I had to choose which guy is smarter, I would say Shakur Stevenson. He's got some crazy stats too. Like, nobody touches him. It's crazy, but nobody touches him. And it's because he's so instinctive defensively. And on top of that, he knows his range and his distance. He knows how close somebody is to hitting them in the instant. And he can pull away and take that away from them very, very quickly. So I think maybe, if anything, I just see a little bit more dog in Lopez than I do in Shakur Stevens. And I think that's why I feel like he could be I feel like he's my number one ranked guy, and then Lopez, and then Shakur Stevens is 2. I think I see a little bit more dog in Lopez.
And it might actually it might go back to the competition, because Stevenson might have it, but he just hasn't had an opponent to bring it out of him yet. It's possible, huh?
Oh yeah. And I know Shakur, being from Jersey. I know the crowd that he even runs around with now. You know, I know that he's not a street dude, but he has a little bit of a street mentality, and that shows up in the ring. A lot of times it shows up as dog in the ring, but for some guys it shows up as a distraction. And I think that we have not seen the competition yet that would prove to us whether that's a distraction or if it is dog for Shakur Stevens.
Right, I agree. All right, let's go back to Lomachenko, because we were talking about, 9-0 boxers, they might not be able to support themselves, or when they get around 10-0, they're barely able to support themselves. And, a lot of not a lot, but I see some boxing fans, like, they say, oh, Lomachenko, he won the belt. When did he win the belt? In his third fight?
I think he was,
or the second fight. Or 4-0 or something.
So he took a world championship title. I think it was his third fight. He took a world championship title, and he ended up losing that fight. I think 2 fights later, he ends up winning a belt. So before he was 6-0, he had a title.
Right. And so how impressive do you think that is? He like set the record for winning a championship belt so early, but considering he was 30 years old. Yeah. Is that impressive, or is that not impressive? What do you think?
Well, it's still impressive because he had to take the title. And so it's still impressive, especially when you don't have professional experience. You don't have the professional accolades to support you wanting to be in a world championship fight. So to me, it's very impressive. I think maybe, if anything, you could consider the weight class, the division that he was in. I think that if he was in the welterweight division trying to compete for a title, I think it would be a lot harder, because the competition gets stiffer. Even before you get to the world championship level, it gets stiffer. So I think that it would have been more impressive if he was, some like a welterweight, maybe even 140 at that point in time when he won the title. But to me, it's still very impressive, because there really is a difference between amateur boxing and professional boxing. So again, we saw it in the first world championship fight that he lost. Anybody that goes back and takes a look at it, you can really see there's an amateur in the ring and there's a professional in the ring. And if they were to rematch now, Lomachenko, that guy wouldn't have a chance with Lomachenko, because that Lomachenko has really grown up as a professional fighter. He was, when he came into the game, when he came into the professional game, he was a grown amateur fighter, but now he's a grown professional fighter.
Do you think that Lomachenko, I don't know if he really was, but I heard people saying that, he's the pound for pound best fighter. Do you ever think he ever like earned that title?
I'm not crazy about pound for pound because I think that it's all subject to your opinion. The other thing that I learned about pound for pound, they created that I get, what would you call it, that monarch, or they created that title for anyone who wasn't a heavyweight, that because you had the heavyweights who are the superior, is the superior division in boxing. So in order to decipher who's the best fighter in the world, they created the pound for pound so that it would take out the heavyweight division. And now you could see, okay, if this guy fought in two weight divisions above him or two weight divisions below him, he could still become a champion. And I think that Lomachenko is definitely at the top of that. I think that Manny Pacquiao will always be at the top of that until he retires. Terrence Crawford is at the top of that. Also, Canelo Alvarez is at the top of that. Those, to me, are some of the best boxers in the world. Obviously, outside of myself.
Okay, definitely. All right, let's take it back to Manny Pacquiao, because I didn't know this at first, but you used to train with, you used to spar with Manny Pacquiao. How long did you do that, and when was that?
I did 2 training camps with Manny Pacquiao. The first training camp I did with Manny Pacquiao was Miguel Cotto. We got a call from someone out in LA. They were at the wild card. They said, call my dad, Kenny. Manny Pacquiao was about to fight Miguel Cotto. Shawn has a great left hook. I know that that's what they're going to be game planning for. Why don't you bring Shawn Porter out here and just let him spar and let Freddie Roach see him and use that as an audition. Maybe you guys can go to camp with him. And that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly what happened. That was, I believe, 2010 is when he fought Miguel Cotto. And we were in camp with Manny for about 4 weeks in the Philippines. And then when we came back from the Philippines, they asked me to exit the camp. They thought that Manny needed some lighter work going into the fight. I think they felt like if I was still moving around with Manny, it would break Manny down too much, and he wouldn't be as strong and as prepared for the fight as they wanted him to be. And at that point in time, I didn't understand it. Neither did my dad. Again, my dad is all about hard work. And so my dad felt like they were kind of taking the easy road at that point. And he's like, he's telling her, we got kicked out of camp. I'm like, we didn't get kicked out of camp. Relax. This is their game plan, and this is their strategy and how they want to prepare for the fight. And, come to find out, we prepare for world championship titles a lot the same, but a lot differently. We have hard work from beginning all the way until the end. The second time I trained with Manny, I believe, was 2011 or 2012. He fought Shane Mosley. And Freddie says, he says, well, Shawn looks a lot like him. Manny fights a lot like him. So I want him to come in for this camp. And we came in for that camp. And Freddie actually ended up keeping me from beginning to end. I think Freddie knew that was going to be a very tough fight for Manny Pacquiao. And he had to have stiff competition and training all the way from the beginning to the end. And so they kept us for that camp. And then after that camp, we did some of that camp in the Philippines, and then we did the other part in LA. When we were done with that camp, we went back home to Ohio. My dad said to me, he says, get ready, because you're not gonna have any more training camps as a sparring partner. He says, you're about to become a world champion, and we're not gonna be sparring partners anymore. And sure enough, like just a fight or two later, we got the call 2013 to fight Devin Alexander for the IBF title, and I've never been a trainer.
That thing could shut down real quick. All right, it's still not saying it's picking it up. Are we live yet? I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and run it. Go ahead and pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. After that last camp I had done with Manny Pacquiao to get him ready for Sugar Shane Mosley, we went on back home to Ohio for a little bit of time, and my dad says, "Hey, you're done being a sparring partner." He said, "We're about to fight for world titles, and world champions they're not sparring partners." So, and the blessing from that was December 2013. I got the call for my first world championship title, IBF title against Devin Alexander, who was the champion. Yeah, and that's all she wrote, man. We bring him in now. We not sparring partners anymore.
Yeah, that's a dope story, man. All right, look. Since you were Manny Pacquiao's sparring partner for a while, were you able to pick up anything he does? Like, he's had an amazing career, and there got to be some things that he does that maybe other people don't do. Like, what did you learn from being in Manny Pacquiao's camp when you were sparring with him?
You know what? I think this is gonna catch everybody by surprise, but before we would train, he would come in the gym, say hello to Freddie, say hello to everybody that's in there, and then he would pray before he got started training. And I looked at that, I was like, wow, like, I pray in the morning before I pray at night, and I pray over my food, but never occurred to me that I should pray before my sparring, that I should pray for my training. And that's something that my dad and I we took back home with us. You'll see us actually when the cameras are around and we're training and stuff like that, we drop down on our knees and we pray before we train. And that's the number one thing that I took from Manny. Everybody talks about his faith, and they talk about, how he's a devout Christian, and it's pretty new to people, but this is stuff that we've seen from Manny for years and years and years. So that's the number one thing I took from Manny. But outside of that, outside of the faith, I saw Manny work hard. I saw Manny work and work and work. And not only that, but enjoy it. I think a lot of times now, since training with Manny, I really started to tell myself, enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the training, the rigorous days and the hard work, and enjoy your dad yelling at you, enjoy everything that's going to come at you, because once it's fight time, you don't want to live with any regrets of what you should or shouldn't have done in camp. And I think that, again, we're talking mentally, that was what I was able to start doing time and time again, camp after camp, is really just enjoying the hard work and the rigorous training, and even the dieting and the weight loss, because it's all worth it at the end of it,
Right, definitely. Okay, so check this out. I have a lot of Filipino fans that watch my YouTube channel, and so they might like to hear you say this, since you have some insight on Manny Pacquiao. But if you were to give Manny Pacquiao his flowers and his acknowledgement for his greatness, like, what would you say that made him great? I mean, we know he went through 8 divisions. What made Pacquiao like one of the greatest boxers?
I think what made Manny, or has made Manny, great is I'm not saying this to make any more fans, especially over there in the Philippines, but literally the Philippines is what made Manny who he is, made Manny great, made Manny an 8, 9 division world champion, whatever it is now. His upbringing, what he came from, and his desire to get out of that, his desire to bring so much hope, so much financial relief to his country, economic relief to his country, now being a governor of his island, his country. That all of that is what kept Manny going, what has kept Manny going. It created the drive, it created the heart, it created the mentality that he has. The Philippines is what made Manny who he is. Coming from the streets, his lack of education, it made him hungry. Understanding that fighting and that boxing could get him everything that he could ever dream of. Boom, there it is. Obviously, you combine that with his abilities and his talent, and then you combine that with a great coach in Freddie Roach and everyone else who's been around him and to got him to the point that he's at, his best friend Brew Boy. That's what made Manny great. And so, again, not to make any more fans, but the Philippines literally is what has made Manny who he is.
Okay. I had Keith Thurman on here, and I asked him, like, who had the better career, Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather? And I would like to get your wait, hold on, my stream is tripping again. What is it saying? That was a good answer though, right there.
Yeah, man. It's funny. I've never thought about it until you asked me that. But I know Manny. I've seen his story, and I know it all. So that is how Manny is who he is.
It's back working. I think it is. All right. So I want to ask you that question that I asked Keith Thurman. Who do you think had the better career, Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather?
You know what? It's tough to say. I think Manny's got well over 60 fights. Floyd has 51. He's 51 and all, I believe. I think it's all about the opposition, and it's all about what those guys did. If I had to say who had the better career, I'm probably gonna go with it's a pick'em. I could go with Manny Pacquiao based on who he fought, especially at those point in times when. Remember, he fought Margarito when Margarito was smashing cats. Of course, Sugar Shane and the beloved Nassim Richardson, they found out that Margarito had been loading his gloves and his wraps and things like that, and they were the first ones to really pull that out of Margarito. But what Manny did against Margarito, he just completely demolished Margarito especially at a point in time where Margarito was very feared. He fought Marquez 5 times, I believe, and won 3 of those fights, I believe, maybe 6 times and won 4 of those fights. Something crazy. I think Manny Pacquiao and Marquez fought 6 times, and Manny won 4 of those fights. It's crazy. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather being undefeated, he fought Shane Mosley, but he fought Shane at a time when Shane wasn't at his best. He fought the cat from Brooklyn. I got his face. What's his name?
Zab Judah.
Say again.
Zab Judah.
Zab Judah. He fought Zab when Zab was when they both were right there. You know what I mean? So it really is a pick'em. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Manny based on who he fought, when he fought him, taking over 8 divisions. You can't deny that, or 9, possibly even 9, and also his opposition. And also, him being who he is to the sport. I mean, both those guys are icons, but they're 2 different type of icons. I think Floyd would be the Jay-Z icon of boxing, whereas Manny would probably be the Whitney Houston icon of boxing. You know what I mean? I think that they're both iconic and they both have done great things. You cannot deny what they've done. And if you pick up a Whitney Houston album, you're gonna be great, glad that you got it and brought it home. And if you pick up a Jay-Z album, you're gonna be glad that you brought it home. So you can't go wrong either way.
I thought you was gonna say
like how I did that.
I thought you was gonna keep it in the genre. I thought you was gonna say like Tupac or somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. No, see, that's the thing. they're two different type of
So
people,
so
and I
different,
think
huh?
that they translate to two different type of people. The same way a R&B fan would like more R&B type music than they would rap music, you know. So
Right.
I even got
Okay.
you with that
Yeah, yeah. Brought the dope analogy out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I dig that. Okay, when I asked Keith Thurman that question, he leaned towards, he said Floyd Mayweather, and he said, oh, wait. No, no, no. No, Keith Thurman leaned towards Pacquiao too. He said Pacquiao lived like the Muhammad Ali life. And
hmm
he said, he wins some, lose some, but he's living the Muhammad Ali fighting the biggest and the best fighters at the time. And he
Yeah.
said, Floyd Mayweather picked and choose when he was fighting a little more, so it
hmm
lost some of its luster because of that.
hmm
Would you agree
hmm
with him?
I would agree. I think that, let me say this: I've been in the room one time at the MGM when Muhammad Ali arrived at the stadium, and everybody stood up on their feet and clapped for Muhammad Ali as he made his way to a seat. It was the first time I had ever experienced anything like that, and it was really was the most amazing thing I had ever experienced in my life. And then at that point in my life, and then the next time I saw it was when Mike Tyson arrived at the MGM Grand Arena one time during a fight, and everybody again stood up and clapped. I think the difference with Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson is nobody was trying to reach at Muhammad Ali. Nobody was trying to take a picture or get an autograph or anything with Muhammad Ali. Everybody just stood up and paid homage to greatness as it walked. And then the only other time I've ever seen that was when Mike Tyson arrived at the stadium one time, but a little different. People were taking pictures, videos. They were reaching at him. They were trying to get at him. I think even there you could see a difference in the respect that people had for Muhammad Ali opposed to Mike Tyson, who again had that same type of effect on everybody in the arena. I think that if Manny Pacquiao continues on the path that he's on right now, I could see that happening to Manny, let's say maybe 10 years from now when he arrives at an arena. I could see everyone just standing up and paying homage to him because he's been that great to the sport and that great to his people and his country. Floyd Mayweather, I think it was take some more time. I think 20 years from now, 25 years from now, I can see people doing that. But right now, I think he's still too close to the sport. I think right now people still have an image of Floyd being a bad boy, of Floyd not fighting everyone, especially in their primes. And I think that takes away a little bit of his career and who he is to the sport. I think right now people would really appreciate everything that Manny has done more than they have Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd's done some unbelievable things as well, especially from a economic standpoint. You know, Floyd sold and has done unbelievable things. Well, he was the number one paid athlete. Is he ever
Of
or
all
or
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
of all time? Yeah. Can't beat
And,
that.
and so let's talk about Floyd for a second, because it seems like one of the biggest digs that people throw at him is he would dance too much in the ring. He wouldn't sit there and fight enough. He wouldn't fight the opponent at the right time or whatever. And so over the course of boxing history, we have seen so many boxers come out of boxing and they're broke. Like I remember seeing one sports announcer saying he was walking out of a Vegas casino or some type of casino. This is like old in the old days. And one of his favorite boxers was out there shining shoes. And so he took the shining kid and he shined that boxer's shoes. And then we also know how a lot of boxers, maybe not now, but a few years ago, they would come out and they would be a little punch drunk or whatever. So it's like, the fans, I think we value too much the warrior style and don't really care as much about the people when they get done with boxing. And so Floyd Mayweather just flipped that on his head and said, forget that. I don't want none of the smoke with the damage. I don't want none of the smoke with all of that. I'm going to do what's best for me. And hopefully you guys like it. If you don't like it, well, it's the sweet science is to hit and not get hit. And I'm going to do it better than anybody else. And if you love the sweet science, you're going to like what I do. And so I like Floyd from that aspect because I look at all, especially black boxers, I used to go to the boxing gyms all the time out here, and I see boxers from maybe just like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and their speech is a little messed up a little bit, not doing well financially. So, I hold Floyd Mayweather in high regards because he just changed that whole dynamic around. What do you think?
My thing with Floyd, and which is what helped me realize how great he was, Floyd is the only fighter in this world that used two different styles and dominated with both styles. There's guys who will get in the ring with one style and change as the fight's going. I'll be right there. And then there's guys that they only have one style, and that's the style you see from beginning to end. They're gonna either beat you with that style or they're gonna lose to you with that style. Floyd used to be pretty boy. He was flashy. He was fast. He was willing to hit guys. He was willing to get in there and mix it up, and he always finished on top. The dude was completely electric. And then, as I know, some hurt hands, he said, I need to switch it up so that I have more longevity in this sport. Completely switches it up and continues to be just as dominant. We'll never, ever see that again. We'll never see one fighter fight one way for 10, 15 years, whatever it was, and then fight a completely different way for another 10 to 15 years. Go that way. Go that way. That way. Go that way. And that's what really helped me realize just how great he was. I was watching his fights. I would go to a lot of his fights, and I was like, I would sit there and I'd be like, damn, he's doing it again. How is he figuring this out? This guy can't do anything. This dude can't do anything. And people started wanting to see who can do something with Floyd. Who can do something with Floyd? Everybody thought it was going to be Manny Pacquiao. Forget all the excuses and the reasons why, and this is what happened from Manny's side. Floyd did exactly what he always does and did it again. And you cannot deny that. So when you say, well, who had the better career, you can pick. Again, you can pick a Jay-Z album or you can pick a Whitney Houston album. But at the end of the day, Jay-Z sold and sold and sold. Floyd sold and sold and sold. And when he got put up against Manny Pacquiao, he sold again and he made it happen again. So it really doesn't matter whose career you consider when you consider who be who. When you consider who be who, what more do you have? What more do we need to talk about?
Yeah, that kind of answers it right there. All right, I want to wrap this up. I know you got things you got to do. Who's your top 5 fighters of all time and why?
My number one fighter, my favorite fighter of all time is Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and I'll make it quick. Marvelous Marvin. Outside of his name, Marvelous, that did something for me already, and I'm Showtime, so I felt like whatever name you were, you had to resemble that name, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler was just that. I think I consider him to be a boxer puncher. He could outbox you. He was fast. He could hit you from the outside, but he was also aggressive, and he could come at you, and he was a complete dog from beginning of the fight to the end of the fight. And a lot of things you see me do in the boxing ring, I'm a dog from the beginning of the fight to the end of the fight. When I was watching Marvin Hagler when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was like, that's what I want to be. Like, that's how I want to fight. And for a long time, I've tried to fight a lot like that dude. Of course, Muhammad Ali falls right there at second. What needs to be said about Muhammad Ali that hasn't been said? Unbelievable, both inside the ring and outside the ring. Everything he's done for Black people, for humanity in general, and trying to unify and unite the world, especially with his fists. Unbelievable talker, unbelievable entertainer. I think every boxer is who they are because of Muhammad Ali. And my number 3 fighter is Roy Jones Jr. I don't think we're never going to see any more highlights like that ever again. The dude was electric. He was entertaining. The fastest fighter ever, in my opinion. And then the rest of the guys just kind of fall in line. Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, of course, Manny Pacquiao, of course, Sugar Shane Mosley is another one of my favorites. And and I appreciate all of the classic fighters like Sugar Ray Leonard. I think that's as far back as I go. Sugar Ray and Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler. I don't really go back too much further than that, other than the heavyweights of the world like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier. Those are some of the greatest of all time right there.
Okay, yeah, you got some dope picks right there. Dang, I think I just forgot the question I wanted to ask. All right, let's switch sports real quick. Basketball playoffs are here. I'm a big Lakers fan. I'm coming from LA or whatever. You from Ohio. I want to ask you, who do you think's better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
I think LeBron James is better, but I think they're just two different types of players. LeBron's bigger. I think he's a more willing passer. He will get down in the paint and rebound the ball. And he can shoot from the outside. I mean, he's really developed a great shot from the outside as well. I think Mike Tyson was just Michael Jordan was just very electrifying and very skillful and an unbelievable scorer. A willing passer as well, but I think he was more of a control freak on the court and wanted to control the game by scoring, which is not a bad thing. But I just think that they're two different type of players, two different type of body styles, and I would pick LeBron James to be on my team before I would pick. There's 1 and 2 for me, because I know that I'm going to get more from LeBron James in the paint. He's going to rebound the ball, he's going to pass the ball, and he's going to score. He's going to play great defense. He's going to block shots, and I think overall that's what makes him a better player than Michael Jordan.
Okay, well said, and I actually agree with you as well. All right, so I remembered the question that I wanted to ask you. So I'm going to tell you what Keith Thurman said, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So I asked Keith Thurman about you guys' fight, and he was talking about how you guys knew each other for a long time or whatever. But somewhere in there, he said you weren't like the most technical fighter, and he's proud of you, how far you've come, being that you're not so technical. So my question to you is, how do you explain your style, and do you feel that you are not the most technical fighter?
I'm definitely more technical than people actually know or realize. I do know in that fight with Keith Thurman, I wish I had been more technical. I wish I hadn't smothered my shots as much as I did. But that's all a part of my game and a part of who I am. I think a lot of people don't realize when you are smothering yourself, you're also smothering the fighter. You're preventing that fighter from throwing the shots the way that he wants to, or being able to move and create space to get his shots off. So a lot of what I do is strategy, but also I think as I've moved forward, especially since fighting Keith Thurman, I think I've settled down more. I think I've really wanted to show people that I'm more technical, that I have a better jab, that I have better punch placement, that I can, box from the outside and use the ring, as well as, getting up on guys and being physical and smothering them and things like that. So I do think that I'm more technical than people realize, but it's just a part of my game as well, and a part of my game plan and my strategy in terms of preventing other guys from being comfortable and doing what they like to do. So my style is going to always be aggressive. My style is always going to revolve around doing whatever I need to do to win a fight. I play spades, and for me, the number one rule in spades is play to win, and that's how I fight. I fight to win. Another one of my favorite games is Monopoly. I play Monopoly like I'm living my life. Like I play that like it's a fight. I play to win. You know what I mean? So that's how I fight. The aggression that you see, when you see me, rushing on guys up on them and throwing 100 punches around and things like that is everything that I feel I need to do in those moments that's going to lead me to winning the fight. So I think that I have a lot more tools in my toolbox. I can do a lot more things. I'm much more versatile than a lot of guys out there, even a lot of guys in my division. But styles make fights, and depending on who I'm in the ring with, you see me do different things. And I think that people, that's kind of become a bit of my image now, is that depending on who I'm in the ring with, you're going to see a different Shawn Porter. So people say now they have not seen the same Shawn Porter in the ring in a long time. So I'm grateful for that, and that's a part of what I want to be known for as well.
I like to compare your fighting styles to like Duke College basketball, because what they do on defense is they're almost like you would categorize it as overly aggressive, because they fill the passing lanes. They're closer. So like say the regular defender is maybe like 8 inches away. They're trying to close it to 6 or 5 because they want you uncomfortable. They don't want you to take your shot and you have 5 inches of space. They only want it to be like 2 inches. So I kind of think that's your style a little bit.
And I appreciate that, and I like that, and I'm gonna use that, because what they do is Duke knows that we're well conditioned athletes. We can run the court. We'll run the court. We'll press on defense, and then we'll run the court. Nobody else conditions the way that we condition, and they won't be ready for the latter half of that second half. And that's how I am as far as boxing goes. I know that no one's going to be more conditioned than me, and I know that as long as I keep you uncomfortable as we go through that fight, you'll become more and more uncomfortable, and you won't be ready for those later rounds the way that I am. So I appreciate that right there. I like that.
Yeah, okay, for sure.
Hey, boss, I got to get out of here, man. My family, they calling me.
Okay, can we do one last question?
One last question, and then we'll do it again, man. I told you, like, when we got on, we'll do it again.
Right, let's run it back. Tell us about the podcast, your podcast.
Love the podcast. It's right here. This is the Porter Way podcast. Long story short, when the quarantine happened, I was like, I got to get equipment, because I know that we're going to be doing things from home with the Inside PBC boxing show that was on FS1 and also on Fox. We have not brought that show back yet, but I got all this equipment. I got 2 of my best friends with me, and I'm like, you know what? I love doing this. The quarantine happened. This COVID is going on. I'm not going to church right now, and I'm not doing the Inside PBC show, and I'm not going to any fights. Where I'm gonna wear a suit at? And so I was like, you know what? If I do this podcast, I could put a suit on, So y'all see me in a suit every Tuesday. We drop it on YouTube. I know it's also on Spotify, and I believe it's also on Apple Music. So it'll be on all your favorite podcast platforms real soon. The Porter Way podcast.
And tell them where they can find it on YouTube. What's your channel name?
The URL is the Porter Way podcast. We're talking boxing. We're also talking sports in general. The very first episode was right after the first NFL football week, and so we talked football. So we'll continue to talk football as the NBA starts to wind down into the championships. I know we're gonna touch on that. There's a lot of big fights coming up, so we're gonna be talking the big fights. Charlo brothers, they fight tonight, so y'all see us recap that on Tuesday. Also Leo Santa Cruz and Gervonta Davis is coming up. Danny Garcia and Errol Spence Jr. is coming up. Hopefully we get Mike Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder for the end of the year. You'll see all that on the Porterway podcast, which comes out on every Tuesday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music, as well as any of the other platforms out there.
All right, dope, man. I appreciate your time. We definitely got to run it back. And
We will.
yeah, we'll stay in contact.